Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Hey there, hi there, ho there. This is Ralph Hayes Jr., RH Jr. Reality Check, coming to you live over the internet through a series of boob tubes known as the boob tube we call YouTube, bringing you another accumulation of the debris that I contribute to the side of the road on the information superhighway. Another little thing I like to call Spleen Squeezins. I changed the background because I was bored with the old one. It says excellent connection, and now it's frozen, and now it's excellent connection again, and now it's frozen again. And I hate you, computer. I hate you, internet. I love you and I hate you. You're like an abusive spouse. Hey everybody. Okay, I will make it clear. I didn't get jack squat done all week. I've sort of been, I could. I'll be honest. No, I'm tired all the time. I could probably get away with using, I've just been in poor health. But the thing of it is, I've been in poor health for a decade now. It's not getting any better because I'm getting older. And I come in here, I sit down in front of and half of the time I'm like, yeah. I'm hoping. I finally splurged. I splurged and bought myself a new bed and mattress. The bed's basically just a steel frame, no springs, no nothing. It's just a steel frame with bars across it. But the mattress is first of all, clean, and it's on the way. And it's that memory foam stuff. And I'm hoping that it will be better for me, for sleeping all around. I'm not even going to replace. I'm not even going to try and move the old bed. The old bed is literally it's a futon. It's a futon metal frame. Again, no springs. Just a futon metal frame with a mattress sitting right on it, and it's one of these old. Just old mattress with springs, and it's a mess, and it's like it's, let's put it this way, burn it in the yard level of old, and well, I'm just gonna once. I keep promising myself I'll get all this trash out of the house, and I never do. I haven't taken one bag of trash out, but I'm going to end up paying somebody to do it. Of course, considering what it takes for me just to get down my own front steps, yeah, I may have to. Because I could just see myself. I'm exhausted after one trip. Drag the trash down the stairs. It's not this great big huge flight. It's like 10 steps. I gotta lower my heifer-sized ass down it backwards, one step at a time. Thump, 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 and then I have to, wait out through, watch your step. I'm barefoot, and the neighbors have dogs. I'm like, and then I step on the gravel, and then I put the trash in the trash can. Once I set the trash can back up, and all the trash, I've got like 6 trash cans standing out there, and all of them are empty at the moment. So, and by the time I get back upstairs, and by the time I get back up the stairs and into the trailer, I'm like, okay, that was one trip for the day. And I'm sit down, Don't get old. It's a trap, kids. It's a trap. But anyway, once once it arrives, I'm going to scooch everything out of the way and set my new bed up here in the living room, right next to my computer, because my computer has all this nice stuff on it. My computer has an alarm clock that I can set for any time. It's got a little alarm clock program, and it's got like 2 or 3 different places I could go. Listen to the rain and waterfalls and stuff to help you fall asleep. And I spend all my time here anyway, so might as well make it a short trip. If I could put the toilet in this room, I would, and just. But anyway, can you hear me out there? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Can you feel me, people? Yea, verily. Why am I doing this broadcast? So I can feel like I did something today. So I can feel like I did something this week. You see, I've basically convinced myself any sort of data, I'm supposed to be a cartoonist, but I'm basically trying to lie to my guilty conscience and say any kind of content you create, it's a step in the right direction. So I'm on here doing this because I cannot muster the focus for anything else. I was like, I'm exhausted. I don't know how long I'm going to be on, but I'm going to strive for at least an hour or so. This is why I don't have it. This is why I'm not in television, folks. Outside of being frighteningly ugly, I have a great voice for radio. I have a great face for radio. Okay, and the music stopped. Ding dong, fiddly fribbin' stupid. Hate it when it does that. Stay home with me, hashtag with me. Okay, I'm really getting sick of this whole thing. I'm getting really sick. Okay, the stats are coming back in, and you've got all these people that are drawing all these fancy charts and diagrams, but the numbers are not holding up. Okay, it's coming out that it's crazy. Okay, I can understand why people got alarmed. I can understand why people really, really got alarmed when the Wuhan virus came out. Okay, first of all, because the Chinese government was freaking out. Rounding people up, quarantining everybody. There are reports that they actually welded the doors shut on infected people. Trap them in their own apartments by welding the doors shut. What is it? That's some dystopic horror novel shit. And of course, then the Chinese government started lying to us. If they'd have told us the truth, right up front, maybe we wouldn't see this panic. But no, it's like, what this is? We don't have this. We don't have the science lab. You don't need to look at a science lab. There's nothing in there. There's nothing. These are not the robots you are looking for. It's the whole crap they pulled with us, and they're still pulling with us. Canada recently had to turn away a bunch of stuff they got from China. Moldy COVID tests. Moldy. And masks. And defective masks and defective COVID tests. And I don't know if it was the COVID, but I think it's probably I think that was probably a typo. But I think it was probably the masks that were moldy. But I'm trying to figure out how they got mold on a COVID test. But you put that mold on there. You put that mold on there, worker. We know what you eat today. American bastard not going to get away with it. We're going to give him the foot rot. But the Canadian, shut up. Okay, but will we ever get new chapters of the Great Alicorn Hunt? Yes, eventually. It's just it's just that tree isn't dropping any fruit right now. You know what I'm saying? I was going to say, I was going to use a metaphor that involved cows and udders, and let's not go with that. As this is right now, in the garden of my creativity, the fruit of that tree is only begun to flower. It may be yet a while before a harvest. So, yeah. Well, anyway, what I'm saying is, okay, China has, China, has their own little outbreak monkey episode, except instead of the monkey biting people, somebody bit the monkey. You know, and well, remember when that was racist? But now it's news reporting. But the Chinese government starts freaking out and goes, what they are, totalitarian, and then this virus, which is harmless virus, it's no plague, and it starts popping up all over the world. I remember the first few days of looking. One day you'd look at the map and all the little outbreak dots were in, right over in Wuhan in China, and then the next day there were dots all over the thing, like the map had hurt, like it was the night, like the map had just heard it was going to prom night, and so naturally, zits all over, but and it just seemed to pop up everywhere all at once. And the Chinese government was still lying, and this virus was popping up, literally halfway around the world, and people were, and they freaked out a little bit. Okay, we freaked out a little bit. Okay, but this crisis, this situation, with everybody running around like chickens with their heads cut off, it had to happen. And thank God it was something, it was something like COVID and not something like, say, Ebola. That's, started ripping around the planet like it was, jet setting for the 21st century. But it had to happen. This, like I said before, this has to be considered a dry run for when things get really serious. For when one of those, some Chinese asshole sells some more lab animals to the wet market, and somebody has, some, guinea pig on a stick, and the next thing we know, everybody's, got exploding head lesions or something. It's depressing that people are willing to panic and give away all their rights at the drop of a hat, though. They're scared of nothing. They're not scared of, they're not scared of terrorists. They're not scared of crime. They're not scared of people coming in and destroying our way of life deliberately by hand. They're willing. You can't. They're not scared of the consequences of dozens of things. But you threaten the average person today with a germ, and it's just completely lose it all over the place, Just it's just sad, It's just sad. It's just tragic. It's just what we have come to expect from our fellow man. So, anyway, it's unsettling, to say the least. Depressing. But in the end, after all said and done, despite the best efforts of the media, we'll actually learn from this a little bit. The government, at least, will learn from this. We'll learn what does work, what does not work, what is excessive, what is the bare minimum necessary, and the next time this happens, we'll be ready. But here's my question, okay? Here's my question. Even with all these scary charts showing, it's going to peak soon, and the graph chart shows, this graph shows that the cases are going to shoot through the roof anytime now, and all that shows is that the idiots doing the charts don't know how to draw a bell curve. But But what gets me is that even at this point, even at this point, I haven't seen the exact numbers lately. I have not seen the exact numbers lately. But it's still, worldwide, the death toll from this disease is less than what we suffer in America every year at flu season. Or it's drawing close to par with it. Now, that information may be outdated, but what does it tell you? Also, is Sweden, I believe, that has they're doing the restrained thing. You know, the UK was thinking about doing the way Sweden does, but then decided to panic like the rest of us. It was Sweden. They quarantined those that were at risk, the elderly, and those with pre-existing problems, and by and large, they're calculating they're going to reach herd immunity, whatever that is. You know, they're going to be reaching herd immunity basically in about the middle of next week. Well, Rantu of the Shadows, you say, here's a sad thing. My first thought when I realized no stuff from China was, crap, now I can't have my favorite kind of pepper. May I submit to you that's not a small thing. You realize that, you know, that most of history for, you know, most of the last 1,000 years of history were due to people tracking down spices? I mean, they called it the Great Spice Road, remember? Remember your history classes? Oh, by the way, dear England, you're jackasses. You conquered most of the known world in pursuit of spices, and you still don't use any. You're jerks. Imagine how it feels to be an Indian. You come to, you know, your country was conquered by this island of pasty-faced people from halfway around. You go there to, you know, finally your country is independent. You're free. You go to visit this country. And it must have been really important for them to take over my country from this far away. You know, they must have desperately needed those spices. Then you come and taste some actual British food, and you're like, Mahatma Gandhi died for this? Anyway, but think about this. I've talked about this before. This is a fan fiction now. I'm talking about now. I'm switching tracks on you here. Just trying to clean all that here. Now, there is a fan fiction called Stepping on Worm. It's a fan fiction done by Perfect Lion, I think his name is. His writing name is. I'll have to look it up. But anyway, he's a very controversial figure in certain quarters. Of course, so am I. He's very outspoken. He's very rather eccentric. But I love reading his stories, and he has a very interesting take on things. He makes me look middle of the road on certain issues. Let's put it that way. And but his reading is even his bad stories. It's a guilty pleasure for me. Well, anyway, he was the one where I got the idea from to put it in. I read his story, and I used some of the details that he did in my story, The Warcrafter, where he detailed that there are a lot of unexpected repercussions from having a bunch of giant monsters popping out of the woodwork, trampling, among other things, harbor cities. And one of the things he pointed out is, in his story, he ends up, it's a harem story of sorts. He ends up with, his self-insert character ends up. First of all, he uses some. Well, his character leverages powers until he's ramping his own power level up, and it's not a cerebral read. It's a lot of fun though. It's called Stepping on Worm. But anyway, one of the things he discovers when he meets these girls, these are six. They're actually they're actually a alternate universe version of they would have been, they're in Worm. They live in Brockton Bay. They would have been Sailor Moon and the Sailor Scouts a couple of universes over. But in this world, they're just a group of teenage girls who are, basically trying to survive in one of the worst cities in the United States. And among other things, he's a new Ravi. He's supposed to be it's an isekai. He arrives and one of the first things he realizes, that Brockton Bay being trashed is bad for more than just Brockton Bay. The fact that you have a monster named Leviathan rolling around in the oceans, destroying harbor cities and scaring the crap out of anybody with a boat, it basically means is that international trade is shot to hell. And he points out, you don't think about what that means. You think, oh, that means we have fewer made in China stuff on the counter. But what it means is, okay, to start off with, chocolate. He uses his powers to get them, a few treats. He's trying to help them out. And he's staying with him. He tries to help him out. He gets a few treats, like some. He manages to use his powers to conjure up some herbs and spices and some unsweetened dark chocolate. He manages to make dark. He can't make dairy products. Anyway, he makes a block of dark chocolate for him, and they act like he had showered them with gold and jewels. And he realizes, okay, and he points out that people forget that the spice trade alone made half the world go round. With no trade, some spices. Well, you got spices that will not grow in this country, here in the United States. They're almost, they're very difficult to grow anywhere. Outside of their. All the things that they took for granted, for instance, he points out that among the spices, lavender, he said, there were people who made their fortunes by selling the few tins of cumin or turmeric or other little spices, but among other things that were had become incredibly scarce and incredibly expensive, chocolate and coffee. And you also had problems a lot. And another part of it was that the petroleum trade sort of took it in the cojones, because no super tankers. And while America has its own pumps and its own wells, the infrastructure of the country is being torn to shreds left and right by all these supervillains and psychos and these end-bringers popping up here and there. So everything's on a shaky keel. I mean. Imagine working on an oil rig out in the ocean, and you hear about this 30-foot tall monster, that likes to cause tidal waves on a regular basis. How long would those last? How long would that job last? But and he also pointed out that the drop in petroleum trade meant that people focused more on trading petroleum products. And the government focused more on routing petroleum products to more necessary things and away from luxuries. Luxuries like condoms. Condoms are latex. And when you're in a country that is looking at possible price hikes and price runs and shortages and all sorts of other economic upheavals on top of the problems of just getting the stuff made. You've got to choose between rubbers for sexy fun times or rubber gloves for surgery. Latex, plastic and rubber, plastic and latex products for IV tubes, medicines for penicillin. Let us put another thing. Penicillin, when it's plentiful, hey, no big deal. But when the penicillin starts getting more expensive, or it just simply isn't being delivered, the doctor's going to give you a lot of dirty looks because you go in there with some gonorrhea, and you ask for his little magic pick-me-up injection to take care of it. That's one treatment he can't give to somebody else who wasn't as stupid as you. Perfect Lionheart. Oh yeah, there's like I said, there are plenty of oil rigs. There are plenty of oil rigs and oil right now. Right now, America is a net exporter of oil. But that's a very iffy economic stand. That can change, especially if you get another jug-eared asshat in power, who wants to save the world from petroleum byproducts. And starts obstructing coal and oil everywhere he can. I'm looking at you, Obama. No need to clean them jug ears out. I don't respect the man. I can't respect the man. He's a criminal. But anyway, moving on. Getting away from Obama. Don't want to talk about him. Well, anyway, I put that in my story. I pointed out, that certain sexual mores probably in Brockton Bay probably would have taken a few steps back. This is a crisis. Look at our own situation now. We shut down for what? They're talking like 3 months. How long has it been already? A month? Month and a half? I lost track. I don't keep track of the calendar too well. But it's been less than 2 months. And already there are multiple industries in this country that are reeling. Look at what happened just because people started hogging toilet paper. Suddenly, there was an artificial shortage. It caused a wave of disruption beyond that. You got to understand. Because these stores are coming out, we're out of toilet paper, and they'd call up the trucks, and the trucks would be rerouted from picking up any other product, and they'd load up on toilet paper and bring it out to so, other things did not get delivered because everybody was trying to keep up with the crazy people buying all the toilet paper. And failing. So, people finally calmed down, and now they're going to find something else to panic about. But, I feel like taking, when I put this in my story, I suggested, okay, first of all, you've got a situation where petroleum and petroleum byproducts, such as plastics, rubber still comes from a rubber tree plant, and rubber tree plants don't grow in America. It's an imported product. Make synthetic rubber. It's not as good as natural rubber. It's not as durable, and it's kind of expensive to make. So either way, you're looking at suddenly latex condoms are downgraded to they are a luxury item, so they are going to be further down the list of the must make and must deliver products. 2, more expensive. And 3 is going, it would cause a backlash. People, look at what happened with toilet paper. Same idea. Now, me and another guy were saying that, I put this in his, and of course, boom, the idea was is that because of the shortage of, among other things, condoms, IUDs, spermicides, all the other birth control medicines and products that people use today, that there had been that in worm there had in my version one there was something a little bit of a reversal of people's sexual ethics to a more conservative state. And people were coming out of the woodwork. Oh, this, if they got, if they can make rubber tires, they can make condoms. And me and one other reader were having just back and forth with these people, because trying to point out the basic this isn't a moralistic triumphalism. It's about basic economics. These people were raised in a generation of a couple of generations of being having smoke blown up their ass about safe sex. Sex is not safe. Sex is not safe. It's damn dangerous, especially for a woman. So it should be approached with a considerable amount of caution and respect, if not a certain moral outlook. But try and tell any of the modern generation that. Well, anyway, I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about, I tried to point out, I was pitting for, this isn't a matter of them, having shortages for a few weeks, okay? In the world of worm, in the wormverse, they have been suffering. It's the early 2000s. They have been suffering from these monster attacks. Just wrecking their international trade since the 80s. Literally, the 80s, and I believe the earliest attack by one of the Endbringers was supposed to be in like 1980 something. I'd have to look up the timeline. But anyway, this has been going on for longer than the protagonist, Taylor Hebert, has been alive. So yeah, that's more than long enough to cause a social sea change in attitudes about people who use pharmaceuticals and medicine and somewhat essential resources, so that they can go out and have lots of sex. But how dare you suggest that? Man, everybody talks about how high and mighty conservatives are, but man, you'll never see anybody with a taller pulpit than a liberal with an axe to grind. Anyway, I'm sitting here thinking about. I was thinking about this. And I'd love to walk up behind all these a-holes that were mocking me and giving me grief over that part of my story and say, "Well, what do you think of my hypothesis now? My little, perfect Lionheart, me, does our little hypothesis seem a little more realistic?" Some bunch of bumbletwats start buying up all the toilet paper and the economy comes apart at the seams. Speaking of Warcraft, is there any plans regarding Riley Bonesaw? No. I get so tired of telling people this. No. Okay, I make one throwaway joke line at the end of the chapter, and everybody's convinced that, oh, he's going to write a fan fiction with Riley as a pony and in Equestria, and she's going to be out there, getting the Cutie Mark Crusaders to swap heads or something. I'm like, no, no. You want to write it, you're going to have to write it yourselves. Because it was a joke, one of the, okay, it was a throwaway joke about My Little Pony, but it was also just a joke in general about these little girls like ponies, right? We can find her a world with ponies. That'll work. Yeah, just. Yeah, aspirin. Thousands of things you don't even think about would short. Well, look at this crisis. Okay, I've lived through a couple of blizzards down in Tennessee. I lived in Tennessee for a while. I lived in Florida for a while. Anytime a hurricane blows in or a big storm blows in, especially a blizzard, those people in Tennessee have got the brains of a turnip when it comes to dealing with snow. Every single dang time. They will predict a storm 2 or 3 days ahead. And immediately, every shelf will be cleared of bread, milk, eggs, batteries, and toilet paper. That's where. If I was younger and had more energy, I'd be lobbying for the, for new toilets to be required with a mandatory bidet. Is stupid. It's gotten stupid. It's beyond stupid. Anyway, yeah. And look, it's I've been waiting for a month now. The local pizza place that I told you all about, Smitty's Pizza. They have pizza and sandwiches and salads and cheese sticks and they have delivery, of course. And they also have pie, and they have ice cream. They have ice cream by the pint. They have Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Or they used to have. It's still on their menu, but I have been calling, I called in for a month. Every day. I got to the point, I was, I was saying, I would like a pizza, or maybe, no, I know what I'd want. I'd like some Ben & Jerry's. I wonder what flavors they have. Do you have any, what flavors of Ben & Jerry's? Oh, we don't have any this week. This store, this Smitty's has been advertising ice cream for its entire time in business, but for a month now they have been unable to restock their freezers with pints of ice cream. I called another Smitty's on the other side of town. They had ice cream, but they weren't going to deliver to my area. And I was here. Finally, I found out. I was bored. I was looking east of Chicago Pizza. We have pints of ice cream, and I'm like, ah! And I literally ordered. I literally called him up, and I had been craving ice cream, Ben & Jerry's ice cream, for so long. And they had 2 or 3 flavors. And I was like, I'll have one of each, thank you. Dum. And I ordered. I had a pizza guy deliver me 3 pints of ice cream and some soda. But man, I had been craving it so bad, and I couldn't get it because the only people I could get to, the only people that would deliver to my house, up to that point, but phooey on it. It's ridiculous, people, there are all sorts of fractures, and it's not just a supply chain, it's a supply web, and there are broken lines everywhere, and you never know who's going to have what anymore. And that's just from 6 weeks of regular business being interrupted. Imagine what it would be like after 6 years, after a year, after 10 years, after 20. And I don't know why I got back on ice cream and on that again. It's probably because it's dwelling on my mind. All right, there are two things I know about Ben and Jerry's ice cream. One, the owners are a couple of pinkos. They are. They're socialists as the day is long. They're hippies, basically, who managed to get rich and are still trying to convince themselves that they're not. They're bobos. All these little pretenses they put up. Oh, we don't. We only pay ourselves so many times more money than the lowest paid employee, and all this. You can afford to do that crap. And here's another interesting thing about Ben and Jerry's ice cream. I forget whether it's Ben or Jerry, but one of the founders has no sense of taste. No, literally, he has what it is. I don't know whether it was an injury or a sickness or whatever, but he has no sense of smell and thus no sense of taste. So for him, food experience is all about textures. Crunchy, chewy, smooth and creamy. All that. That's why they make Ben and Jerry's the way it does. They do. By putting all those. That's why Ben and Jerry's has all those big chunks in there. Instead of little bitty microscopic chips like everybody else does. Because for him, it's all about texture. And it became a winning combination. You've been craving Subway, but all the ones in your area are closed. Yeah, I know how it is. You want a sandwich from one particular... You remember how your mom was, Can we stop at McDonald's? We'll make you a hamburger when we get home. We've got food at home. Here, I'll make you a hamburger. I'll make you a better hamburger than McDonald's every day. And you wanted a hamburger. You wanted a McDonald's hamburger. And she comes out there and she slaps that meat on the ground. And then she puts it in between two pieces of bread, and it's oozing through the bread. 2 slices of Wonder Bread for a bun. And you stand there, and the grease is soaking through, and the bread's turning into pink dough. You stand there trying to eat your pink dough ball. And he's like, this is not McDonald's. Just shut up. Yeah, well, the thing of it is that taste and smell are tied together. So anosmia, if you lose your sense of smell, you generally lose nearly all your sense of taste. At least that was what I remember being told in science class. Of course, they may have changed their minds about that recently, and you never know. But anyway. The next few chapters of World of Warcraft, are sort of going to be breather chapters. Chance for the characters to slow down, and have I wouldn't want to call them fluff, but get a little character development. One of the things, some of the characters, Taylor is going to have to deal with the fact that this is the first time she's genuinely killed someone. So she's going to be a little bit unraveled from that. Some of the others are going, this is going to be a chance for the others to be spreading out into the community, start getting known as heroes on the street themselves, like Taylor did, and like Adrian did, and also, and you have Laktara. She's going to have to cope with the grief. All her dogs, except for the ones that were at the Lost Workshop with her, were killed by Chuckles brutally, and she's going to have to deal with the grief from that. And it's going to be a lot of well, it's basically just going to be a little bit of world building, a little bit of people shuffling things, getting ready for the next phase of the story. Because Taggart's going to show up. You see, this is going to be Taggart is basically going to be Cauldron's attempt at an end run. They can't use their usual methods of subterfuge, espionage, and assassination because Brockton Bay has basically become a place where their most potent abilities aren't very much use. Doorkeeper can't open doors there, or except in very few locations. Contessa nearly has a nervous breakdown about thinking of going back there. A walking kid beaver coming into the fiction? You say, I don't know Worm that well, so all I'm coming up with is that a walking kid beaver is going to come into the fiction. I have no idea where you're getting that, Lord. That's just what the hell? I'm literally sitting here looking. I'm staring at the screen with the with a what the fuck expression on my face. Oh my god, what the fuck, Taggart. Taggert. Taggart is not a short little beaver kid. He is a ex-military. He's ex-military. He's one of the high-ranking members of the PRT, the government parahuman response team. They're basically the government organization. The Protectorate is the superhero team. The PRT is the government bureaucracy that oversees the Protectorate and basically makes everybody's life miserable by being what a government office always is, incompetent. And Taggart Do you remember the old TV show MASH? You remember the main antagonist, Sergeant Burns? Or rather, Major Burns. Or maybe the name Niedermeyer gives you an idea. From Animal House. He's that kind. Taggart is that kind of character. He hates supers even more than Pigot does, and he's he's also a paranoid reductionist control freak. And he's going to come. He's going to be sent into Brockton Bay with the basic instructions are going to be coming down from above. Crap rolling downhill. That his job is to get these rogue elements under control, no matter what it takes. Yeah, the original Worm canon, if you ever read it, it's basically, it starts out with the whole story starts out with a girl being bullied so bad that she ends up hospitalized, and it goes downhill from there. Yeah, it's not exactly, I kept reading it because parts of it were, just exciting to read and interesting, and it's a superhero adventure. I keep going and I keep going and I keep going and I keep going, and I'm like, my lord, this thing is huge. And oh, this is so bleak. Oh, this section is so dark. It keeps getting darker. It's got to lighten up soon, and I keep going, and I get all the way to the end, and the girl who just saved the world gets 2 bullets to the head, and I'm like, oh, screw you, Wildbow. And apparently his sequel to this is called Ward, where basically where the survivors of Earth Bet end up on another world, or several other worlds, and one in particular they've built a big super city, and they're trying to start civilization over, and the heroes have sworn, all the capes have sworn to band together and help humanity thrive again, and they're screwing it up again. They're screwing up even worse than they were in the first one. And Ward follows the adventures of Vicky, formerly known as Glory Girl. She went through a hellish traumatic experience because in original canon, her adopted sister Amy, she basically Amy got tortured into a mental breakdown by the Slaughterhouse-9 and lost control of her powers and basically turned Vicky into an almighty biological mess, basically. So deformed she had to be bedridden because she couldn't move. She was I won't even try and describe what was left of it. And years later, it's supposed to be years later. I don't know if it was Amy or some other healer, but they cured Victoria, Vicky, and restored her to having a normal human body. And she's a little messed up in the head now, and the story follows her, trying to survive on this new world. And apparently it's getting thumbs down all over the place, even by Worm fans. Because basically Okay, like I said before, Wildbow seems to have a hostile personal relationship with things like science, math, realistic, uh, you know, dimensions and proportions, and in the original canon, Taggart came into Brockton Bay. Taylor Hebert had become the villain Skitter. She had ended, she had uh, basically one of the heroes screwed her. She went out. She wanted to be a hero. She went out. By sheer, but half by skill and half by luck, she managed to defeat Lung, the most dangerous uh, cape in Brockton Bay, and the leader of the local protectorate, the local hero team, shafted her, took credit for he basically conned her into letting him take credit for the capture. And then it blew up in his face, you see, because Taylor had taken Lung down basically by attacking him with a swarm of spiders. And Lung, despite being a rigid, she had enough Black Widow spiders bite him someplace unmentionable that he was easily taken down. But Armsmaster didn't think to ask about that, and he injected Lung with a super powerful knockout drug meant for people with super strength and regeneration. Brutes, they're called in the terminology. The consequence was that it shut off Lung's healing power long enough that his fruit and veg rotted off. And naturally, this did not go over well with the public, with the PR offices in the protectorate, and he got in all sorts of trouble. And so naturally, he blamed Skitter for his humiliation and for his loss of status in the protectorate. And he proceeded to make things incredibly difficult for her after that. Meanwhile, it turned out that what it was is Skitter had heard Lung saying, "Oh, find the children and kill them." The children he was talking about were a gang of teenage supervillains who had robbed him. And all these villains all glad hand her, oh, thanks, we really owe you, and they even gave her a cut of the take, and she didn't know what to do. But the thing of it was is that the villain team had treated her better than any of the kids at school, any of the teachers, uh, better even than they treated her better than the heroes had. And she told herself, "Oh, what I'm going to go." She told herself what she was doing. She's going undercover. So she said, "Oh, sure, I'll join your team." And she joined the villains, the Undersiders. And her plan was to gather data, and eventually, turn it over to the proper authorities. But she went native. She decided she liked the good or bad. She liked the villains better than she liked the heroes. because they were more decent to her and to other people than the supposed heroes were. And that's how the story starts. Well, now if you've been reading the Warcraft, you know what the basic problem is with the premise of with the premise of Worm is basically is that you know uh, Wildbow, the author of Worm, seems to work under the basic presumption if there is any possible sign that somebody could be good or decent or honorable, crush it immediately. You know, have them revealed as an asshole in the next chapter. Or villainize them in some fashion. So Wildbow, he should have called himself Edgelord. Oh yeah, as I put it, as I had one of my protagonists put it when he found out he was going to the world of Worm. He said, "Crap, that place is so nihilistic that it shits bats." So yeah. Okay, I can, I have a very hard time forgiving everyone being dumber, than, okay, to quote Auron, I can usually forgive bad science. I have a very hard time forgiving everyone being dumber than a sack of bricks or as evil as Morgoth's minions. Well, it's not so much just science. It's a matter of, I'll agree with you with the latter half, everybody everybody carrying the idiot ball or the villain ball for no sensible possible reason. Doing stupid stuff just because it's evil. That's stupid. I hate it. Just as much as you and probably more. But I'm sorry. For me, the science thing dovetails with everything else. It's one thing to write stories about people who have abilities that, are out of the ordinary or that seem to break the laws of physics or things like that. But it's another thing where you literally have to you have to change how, say, gravity works for your story to make sense. Or you write something that's so gratuitously stupid. Like, you think that science is a minor point? You think science is a minor point? Let me put it this way. The Bible. One of the most important, it's probably, in my opinion, the most important book that the human race has ever had handed to it. A font of wisdom and understanding and knowledge and comprehension, and it is vastly important. But you got some. Without fail, there will always be some twat in the back of the room. Try and visualize this being said in the annoying, pretentious voice of a 14-year-old atheist. Okay. Well, what about that verse where they say pi equals 3? As if that one thing tears down the entire edifice, and they believe it should. Well, the problem is, okay, the verse in question was talking about, it was a passage in the Bible talking about some of the luxurious things that Solomon had in his mansion, in his palace, and Well, one of the kings of Israel, anyway. But there was a description of a bath. Is a bath, and it was described as being a length across and 3 lengths around. And so if you go with those numbers exactly, you get pi equals 3. Yeah. Well, the problem is that it was just, first of all, it was a general description. It wasn't a mathematical formula. Second of all, how broad was the lip? Have you ever seen a bathtub with a razor thin edge at the top? Have you ever seen a perfectly round bathtub? No. But let's pretend the tub is perfectly round. There will be a lip, at least of a foot or so. Where around the edge. So that changes the you measure, and so are you measuring around the lip? Are you measuring around the side? It was supposed to be a general description to give you, okay, it was so many lengths, around, and so many, and 1 length across. But for millions of disaffected neckbeards, fedora neckbeard, scientific atheist with a high school math degree. That's enough to derail them from even looking at the Bible. Now, you take a work of fiction where you're building a world from scratch, and if you get something internally wrong, if you get something internally inconsistent, that's going to screw things up. If you get something that's mathematically inconsistent, if for anybody with any understanding, it's going to be like you're trying to insist that 2 + 2 = 5. If you put in facts where, let me give you an example. There is an entire website used to be up. It was called Bad Movie Physics. The guy that wrote it was a college professor, science professor, obviously. And he said what inspired it. One day he was they were screening some really old 60s sci-fi movie. It was about this. It was supposed to be about the Earth. The sun had sent a solar flare, and the Earth had gotten caught in it. And the solar flare, the gases of the solar flare, had gotten caught in the magnetosphere. Stick with me. The gases that got caught and stuck in the magnetosphere and were surrounding the Earth and weren't blowing away, and they were burning, and it was in danger of basically cooking the world alive. If they didn't find some way. And so what they did is they had this super submarine. It was basically a luxury cruiser, except underwater. And their objective was to get to the North Pole, launch a nuclear missile into the magnetosphere, make an explosion so all the solar wind gases could out into space and save the planet. And this physicist is sitting in there in the front. He's like, "Oh, geez, you can just feel the aneurysm forming, for all the things." But it wasn't, it was a corny premise, and bad science to begin with. But you're there for a B movie, so he sits through it, and it gets worse. It gets worse. The front of the submarine. The entire front has a huge glass viewing window. If you know anything about submarines, you know just how deep a submarine can go with a glass window. Not very. And what's more, it had a tank. It had an open aquarium, an open-topped aquarium in one of the science labs on the ship, full of sharks. This was a dramatic thing that one of the villainous spies falls into. And despite the fact that the ship is, diving and shooting up and doing U-turns, the top of the water at the top of the tank stays perfectly level, no matter which way the camera lens tilts. That kind of bad scientist. The breaking point for this scientist, though, is that they've reached, the Antarctic. They've reached the Arctic Ocean. And they're cruising along, and the North Pole is melting, and big glacier icebergs are breaking loose everywhere, and they're cruising through all this, and they're underwater, and they're being pursued by enemy subs. Why? I don't. They're trying to save the world. Why are they trying to stop them? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. It's a stupid movie. But they're cruising along, and the enemy subs shoot missiles at them. Torpedoes, and the torpedoes miss the ship and hit an iceberg overhead, and chunks of the iceberg fall down through the water. The hero sub manages to evade them just barely, and the ice falls down on the enemy subs from above. Crunch, 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 and the day is saved. And he just lost it. He lost it. He said he just couldn't take it. He stood up in this rinky-tink, budget theater. He stands up. He pointed at the screen and screamed, "Ice floats! Ice floats!" And he said the whole audience just started laughing and applauding him. It was that kind of experiment, That's when I'm talking about bad science. That's the kind of bad science I'm talking about. You want another example? There was a sci-fi book. I have never forgotten it. I guess that was the point. The guy writes this. He's going to live in he's going to live in infamy forever. He's like Ed Wood. Well, anyway, this sci-fi novel, space opera, space battles, intelligent robots, and the whole 9 yards that became the standard model after Star Wars. Anyway, I'm reading it, and among other things, one of the challenges that the heroes face is that there are stretches of there are stretches of space where there is absolutely no cosmic dust. Right? Even in regular space, even in outer space, out there, there's traces of gas and dust. This is a true fact. But in this book, their problem is that there are these rare areas where there's almost none left. There's areas where there's no gas or dust or anything, and their rockets have nothing to push against. I will repeat that for the slow members of the class. In this book, their rockets could not fly because they did not have anything to push against. This was written way after Star Wars, way after the Apollo missions, okay? Way after we gotten into space, okay? If this had been written back in the 1800s, that would have been an excuse. But every grade school science student knows better than this, or ought to, and their teacher ought to be flogged in the street if they don't. Rockets do not work by pushing against the air. It is not remotely how a rocket propels itself. And yes, rockets propel themselves just fine in a vacuum. So yes, accurate science, or accurate science, internally, and if you're talking fantasy, internally consistent magic. An internally consistent magic system, a there's also the thing known as verisimilitude, as in it makes sense in its at least in its own context. These things matter. They matter just as much as writing cookies. You can have the best story in the world, but if you screw up the details, you lose the audience with one detail. There was a movie that was, it was called Air Force One, and and it was a Harrison Ford flick where he was the president and he had to take his plane back from the terrorists that had hijacked it. Air Force One, and there was one scene where he makes contact with the forces down on the ground using a particular type of military radio that he had managed to find in some locker someplace in the belly of the plane. And every military serviceman in the place, every radio operator, anybody that had ever worked with radio communication equipment just looked at that, rolled their eyes, and mentally they'd already walked out of the theater. Because the radio he was using, it was basically a walkie-talkie that had a broadcast range shorter than the length of the plane! Military people hate watching military movies because people in Hollywood, they don't just get they don't just get factual things wrong like decorations and ranking and uniforms, and they get the mentality completely wrong. There was a movie, what was it? I forget what it was called. Premise was that this guy was a super soldier, part of a super soldier program, and they've just come up with a new genetically engineered super soldier, and and as part of the demonstration, the genetically engineered super soldier beats the crap out of the old school super soldier, and they get rid of him by dumping his body on a junk planet. And he finds out, and they rescue him, and he finds out that there are scavengers living on the planet. And the scavengers rescue him, and then he realizes that the super troopers are going to come back and wipe out everybody on this planet. For what reason? Anything else in the movie, just like everything else in the movie, no stupid frickin' reason. And he's like, and there's, what are we going to do? And he says, I'm going to kill them all. And then he does. So that is, there's your movie, But there was one guy who he did a review of this. He was an American soldier, and he looked at these, he watched the review, and the montage of this kid being raised to be a super soldier. There were terrible things, just batshit insane things that, apparently a Hollywood director believes that this was, normal procedure for training soldiers. Because they had one scene where all the students, who are all like 10, are forced to watch a pack of wolves rip apart a pig, to toughen them up. And there's another one where they're all marching. They're doing cadence, doing the 1 mile run, and there's one lagging behind. He's running out of steam, and the others keep running, and you see him stop to take a breath, and up pulls the Jeep, and off camera you hear and he pointed out, first of all, that thing with the pig, that was batshit insane. You hear rumors like that, the supposedly bunny training, where supposedly Navy SEALs are made to raise a bunny or a dog or a puppy or something, and then they're expected to kill and eat it to show how tough and ruthless and willing they are to do, to do anything they're ordered to. It's just, hippie bullshit. And this thing about, even if you had a government that was, a government or a military that was, wicked enough and evil enough to kill kids for not being up to snuff for the military program. He said, do you realize for every soldier in the battlefield, there's like a dozen people in the supply chain behind him? If nothing else, the kid could be retrained in the support chain. Or recon, or a dozen other things that didn't involve, straight up combat. Forever, logistics. That's the term I'm looking for. Say, just offing the kid for not being able to keep up a 10-mile hike. Despite not only being evil, it's also a stupid waste. Even a truly ruthless military would be smart enough to recognize that. Utter, Well, let me give you an example from Worm, the new sequel, Ward. The main premise is, the main setting is, this giant super city that they've built, which coincidentally apparently doesn't have any farms. And we move on. If I have to explain to you why that is so frickin' stupid. I get the feeling that Wildbow is basically another edgelord who shot his load and now has nothing left. I'm going to mix up some... I ain't got anything to drink. Drink a mouse of soda. But you see what I'm talking about. If at any point your audience goes, it doesn't matter why, if your audience at any point goes, this is stupid, you've lost them. They've already turned around and mentally, even if they're still saying, they've mentally turned around. They're walking out the theater doors, or they're closing the book or the comic, or turning off the video game without buying it. And if they're offended by it, if it's insultingly stupid, it's not only stupid but insulting. Be prepared to say goodbye to them twice, because they'll turn around, and every customer you lose is 10 more that you never see. Because they don't, they talk to other people. Look at what the internet is. Look at what YouTube is. Millions of people tell you, this product sucks. This movie sucked. This movie sucked. And it's scaring the crap out of the people in Hollywood. Holy crap! You mean the opinions of our customers matter? I did not see that one coming. So our plans to make an entirely transvestite team of Avengers is off? Oh yeah, there you go. But they have supermarkets, right? Why would they need farms when supermarkets have all the food people need? Yeah. Seriously speaking, though, if at low suburban densities, this factoid has been printed over and over again. You could fit all of civilization, all of humanity could have something like, I forget how many. Every single person would have I don't know, like a dozen acres of land, and we could all live in an area the size, just slightly bigger than Texas, with the rest of the United States as farmland and the rest of the planet as a nature preserve, if you want to really go crazy. I hope they do die off. I hope the studios do die off, because the ones that have been doing this are the ones that need to die. Because if they come out of it, they're like these people that survive a horrendous accident, then come right back and do the same stupid thing again. My grandfather used to work in all sorts of factories. He was a professional. He's a welder, and he worked on a lot of stuff. And my dad, he said he met one of my dad's coworkers. This guy had like a total of maybe 3 or 4. He had like 3 or 4 fingers missing, or half missing at least. And what the heck happened? He said he blew his fingers off. What he'd done is, you see, there are these fuses. There are these fuses in the machinery that they worked with, and you were supposed to use a special tool to throw them. A tool with a nice long insulated handle. You stick the end of the tool in, and then you go click, and psh, and the fuse, and it popped the fuse, and got the motors running again. And well, this guy, he said, "Here, let me show you a trick." And he doubled up the knuckle on his index finger. Went to one of the, he showed this fuse, you can see how it's shut down. He took his knuckle, whoosh, swiped it between the 2 poles, whoosh, and turned it back on. Dad nearly had a heart attack, because that was how the guy had lost those fingers. He had lost 3 fingers that way. And right there in front of my dad, who was still a kid, he had come within a hair of losing a 4th. That's how dumb people are. Eli and T-Mug. No, I'm afraid I didn't see comments this here. You read my new chapters. Just needed a relaxing chapter on Warcrafter. Well, give me a while. This week is I feel like somebody let all the air out of my tires this week. I don't know. I go to bed tired and aching, and wake up with a neck ache and a headache and a backache, and more often than not, I get up because I can't stand to lie there anymore, because it hurts too much. Not because I'm awake. I'll sit up, and I this morning I sat up. It was about 9 or 10 in the morning. Sun was well up. I sat up, and I just slept like that for 2 or 3 more hours. I finally gotten my new, thank God, I finally ordered my new bed. Here's hoping my roof doesn't cave in before my bed gets here. Then get my bed, going to set it up, and he's going to have a nice Posturepedic, the memory foam twin mattress. Just going to set it up here in my living computer room, and just hopefully it will be better for me sleeping wise, because this sucks. With furniture media, it looks like it's going to be Japanese. Oh, what? You're saying that you're talking about the trade where we're shutting down China and switching to Japanese or something? I wouldn't know about that. All I know is the bed I'm getting is basically a merciless steel frame and a nice squishy mattress on top. Well, saying that we have the entertainment industry we deserve, the problem is they're the gatekeepers. They manage to secure themselves a monopoly. And so, literally, we've had it's a choice between a turd sandwich and a shit sandwich. And we rarely, they've made it louder and clearer that every year that they do not want to listen to us. When the people that when their customers come back and say this product is terrible, they say, "Oh, you're just a bunch of basement dwelling fanboys. You're racist and sexist and homophobe and Islamophobe, and you're ugly and your mother dresses you funny and." Oh yeah. Oh, future media, furniture media. Uh, okay, yeah. It looks like the Japanese the manga the manga and anime are basically going to push out the animators and comic artists of the West. The established one, Marvel and DC and such, because Marvel and DC have made it clear that they don't like their customers. They don't want to cater to them, and they'll let their stable of talent talk absolute shit to them. Zero professionalism. But no, we blaming our trying to blame society. It's society's fault. No. Okay. Hollywood managed to Hollywood and the mainstream. They managed to work for decades securing a monopoly. I mean, Disney frickin' tried to buy everything. Can you imagine how terrible everything would be if everywhere you looked there was a pair of mouse ears? Thank God they overreached too soon, and and it bit them in the hand. But no, I mean, when 50 to 100 years ago, let's say about 75 years ago, there were hundreds of corporations. There were dozens and dozens and dozens of corporations competing in the entertainment industry. Dozens and dozens of movie makers, dozens and dozens of TV producers, dozens and dozens and dozens of book and magazine and comic book publishers. But now you look at it, all of them, despite having separate names, they're all owned under the same, umbrella. It's like we've gone from hundreds of corporations to maybe a dozen, and that dozen own everything. I remember reading that there is a grand total of something like 11 scriptwriters in Hollywood that they go to, and these 11, they all live in the same neighborhoods. They go to the same restaurants, hang out at the same clubs, vote in the same party, schmooze the same people. What a surprise! It's a monopoly of ideas, and they're gatekeepers. You got to realize, everybody, the left loves freedom of press so long as they're sure that only certain people can afford to own a press. Then somebody invented a computer, and they're like, "Oh shit, they can type," and it was all downhill for them. Ask Dan Rather. First of the self-anointed media giants to bite the big one. Why? Because he tried to lie on national television, got caught by somebody in his jammies before the broadcast aired on the East Coast, aired on the West Coast, and got taken down. One of the things that baffles you is how Egypt didn't crash when a mass of slaves left. What makes you think it didn't? We're not. I mean, they'd already been through how many plagues? And then they lost an army in the middle of the Red Sea. They probably weren't doing too perky at that point. But you got to remember, one of the things about it is that nationalities, being Westerners, particularly Americans, I don't think we're really aware that nationality, national pride for an American is a different matter than it is for, say, someone from Japan or France or Russia. You go east, in the old country, in the old world. Nationalities were as much a matter of geography and of ethnicity as they were of national borders. It's very tribalistic, and it's still tribalistic. A Frenchman identifies himself as being French not because of his country, but because of his blood. A Japanese, they think of themselves more as a race than as a nation. America, on the other hand, is one of the vanishingly rare examples. A nation that was brought together by common ideals. We have every race, every race, every color, every ethnic background, every social background, every religious background, all together under the banner American. What do we have in common? It's not our blood. It's not where our ancestors were born. It's a set of fundamental values. And we're talking, bottom of the brick wall fundamental that we put into our founding documents. Now, this is why Americans regard their way of life as the best way of life, because those of us who are here have seen how it works, and the rest of the world who sees how it works, and we have millions of people. Which way are the boats going? Basically, people aren't emigrating away from America. Okay. People aren't getting on rubber rafts in in Florida and paddling as hard as they can through shark-infested waters to get to the glorious land of Cuba. It's our beliefs, our values, the belief in the values in the Constitution, a belief in the Bill of Rights. Life, liberty, security and property, the right to pursuit of happiness. Those simplistic, admittedly, but necessarily fundamental values that we hold as self-evident, and that we are audacious enough to believe that other people, deep down want, and if they knew about, would come racing for. We're arrogant because we believe we're right. We're arrogant because we're Americans, because we believe the American doctrine, and we believe it's right. And we've seen a darn hefty load of evidence that our worldview is actually the right one, because it frickin' works. We went in 200 years, we went further than all of Europe did in 2000. We went from the oxen cart to the space shuttle. So fast that we've still got ox carts running around. Poor ox standing out there as the space shuttle goes off. Crap! But, oh. Ask me again, and ask again in 1,000 years if America, if God blesses America that long, whether Americans regard themselves as as a nation or a tribe, and the answer will change, probably, you know, might change a lot, but right here and right now, it's our beliefs that hold us together. Not the ones that we hold in contradiction, but the ones we hold in common. And there's a surprising number of them when you ask the right questions and dig down a little bit. We all believe in to be cliched. We all believe all Americans believe in truth, justice, and the American way. We're just at odds over at odds over how to determine the truth and how justice should be administered and which way America should go. But the details, the fundamentals, we have in common. The details, we're going to be squabbling over forever. But welcome to the world. And this is why when shit goes down, America snaps together like a frickin' Voltron. Let me tell you. I'm serious, man. You think it's messy now? You should have seen how we were prior to 2001, prior to September 11th. Pathetic, piddly arguments, just like the ones we got now. And then those planes hit that building. And everybody dropped their baby rattles and their pacifiers and realized that there was some serious shit going on. And we came together. There were malcontents, assholes, like always. But the nation, we weren't stupid. We saw we had been attacked. It wasn't too much of a strain to figure out who. And the why? Well, we didn't give a damn. We were going to find them, kick their ass, and take their names, After those buildings went down, people lined up to, they didn't know what else to do. They lined up to donate blood because the American Red Cross, they're always running short on blood. Hospitals, emergency rooms, it's always in need. And for the first time in history, they literally filled the blood banks to capacity. Millions of complete strangers saw that evil, tragic event. Saw the people of New York staggering through the ashes, and they opened up a vein. That's frickin' hardcore. You don't do that for people you have some sort of vague, distant tribal connection with. You do it for people you hold values with. You ever heard the saying, blood is thicker than water? Most people take that phrase, blood is thicker than water, they think it means that, blood relations are, are a stronger bond. That's not what the phrase means. It's actually been reversed from what its original statement was. Originally, it was the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of birth. When you're born, when a baby's born, the woman's water breaks. That's the water it's referring to. That was what Jesus was talking about in John 3 when he's talking about John 3 and in several of those verses he says that which is born of the flesh is flesh, that which is born of the spirit is spirit. And in another verse he says, unless you are born of the water and of the spirit. The water he was referring to was the water of natural birth. But getting back to my point is the original saying is blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of birth. It was a saying in ancient Rome. The soldiers who had fought in battles side by side. Soldiers today, they'll tell you there's a bond, and it's always stronger than brotherhood. We're in, America is a nation under a covenant. We hold these truths to be self-evident. We hold them to be sacred. We have too many people out here that don't hold them in as high esteem as they ought to. But those of us who value that covenant still outnumber them by far. That is why America is so fierce against anybody that tramples on its shores. If the only reason we stuck together was because of our skin color, or where we thought our ancestors were born, that would fall apart. Nobody believes in skin. Nobody believes in, a birth certificate. Nobody, it's not your ethnicity. That's not a value. That's not you. That's just decorations on the luggage. Well, you got to be fair, Aaron. California, the vast sweeping proportion of California is not made up of terrible people. It's just, you take certain counties, Los Angeles County, for instance, and those people throw their weight disproportionately around and drag the rest of the state with them. I got a friend, Danny Meyer. He lives in Texas. He says people in Dallas are a thorn in the rest of the state's side. quite frankly, they're trying to get kids to go back to school already. What a surprise. The world will end if the next generation of pod people isn't given their daily indoctrination. They could, they don't want to set up the homeschooling system. Pretty much all their students have internet access at home. Most of them have cell phones that cost more than a teacher's car. So yeah, they could easily set up a home, a study from home system. Just set up some webcams. Have teachers sit at home with the lesson book. Have the kids sit at home in front of the computer with their textbook and papers, and go from there. No, we're not going to do that. It's too effective. What the real problem is that they know that the parents would be looking over their shoulder. And they don't like that. They don't like the idea of actually being under the scrutiny of the people whose children they're screwing up. Yes. I was really concerned as they would rather risk one of these kids turning into the next outbreak monkey rather than change the high and almighty public school system. Let's see, where is it? Least I could do the comic. Now, this isn't one of my regular reads. The comic is called Least I Could Do. But I'll be honest. I'll be glad. I saw him, and I stopped. I wonder what this jackass is up to now. And okay. And in the most recent arc, they're dealing with a quarantine, and he has to go to the grocery store. He wears his Boba Fett helmet. I swear, of all the things to survive the Star Wars apocalypse, they dropped a asteroid made out of feminists on it. Of all the things to survive Star Wars, it had to be Boba Fett of all things, because there was so little there. We knew he was a bounty hunter. We knew he had his own ship. We knew he had a cool suit of armor, and that was all. And they ran with it. Okay, he's saying here, I never want to hear the term unskilled labor again. This is stuff that I've been talking about. I'm like, well, congratulations. The guy's a leftist, but occasionally, the blind pig can find an acorn. The term should be placed by deemed necessary. That sort of chafed me a bit. I mean, I find that the people that in 2019 we were excoriating, all the people were sneering at, they're unskilled labor. They don't deserve a raise. They don't deserve a raise. They're unskilled labor. And now suddenly they're necessary employees. They're essential employees. And they have to come into work or they'll lose their job. And who cares if they get infected? Screw them. I like this last panel. When this is all over, remember who kept civilization running. And the cashier says, and also remember that we had no choice. And she points out, you think I'm some kind of hero? Yeah. She says, if I don't show up to work, I lose my job. I lose my health insurance. She said, I'm not Batman, I'm Robin. She's like, you grew up at the circus? He said, no, the system failed me and I'm being exploited by a billionaire. You know, everyone is calling us heroes and the appreciation is felt, really, no matter how short-lived it is. But the truth is, I can't even afford to shop here to feed my own family. Because the same people thanking me for my service are the same ones who don't think I deserve a living wage. And I'm like, ouch, I do believe I said that myself. You know, I've been saying this. You know what bugs me? Here's a little thing that bugs me is that this guy with his comic, people will listen to him, and they'll talk about how profound and wise and insightful his comic is. Me, same story, no respect. It's like, oh, he's just a right wing. There's a Harvard professor that wants homeschooling. Of course he does. The last thing that a Harvard professor wants is a bunch of educated students. He wants all those little dumb fucks that had spent their entire lives being put through nursery school. Pardon my language. How do we deal with this problem? How do we deal with this issue? We've got to, as one guy was putting it, it's, straight from the horse's mouth. They did an interview with the guy. He's a cashier, and there's this cashier. He admitted he was having a little problem dealing with. He was having just a little bit of a problem dealing with the fact that when the plague balloon went up, he was there, having to face thousands of customers a day, any one of which who could be carrying the virus, while his boss, his immediate supervisor, was staying at home and mailing in his work if he was doing anything at all. It makes me angrier and angrier the more I think about it. That guy that did the guy that does the Dirty Jobs TV show, whatever his name is, I don't like the guy, and I refuse to be talked into liking him. Okay? Because this is a man who's he's basically been selling something that really isn't quite true. Because let's see, first of all, if he's selling himself as this, red cap, rustic, hard-working country guy. He has worked his entire working career has been in the entertainment industry. I'm not sure if he started out as a technician or not on some TV station, but he started out in a TV station. He sells these social values. And anybody sensible will agree with him on the face of it. Hard work, diligent, willing to get your hands dirty to do it. And to work for what you want, and that. But at the same time, he was one of the people that started the whole. You wanted better, you should have gotten better skills. So, and started referring to all these people that were working as unskilled labor. Okay, well, dumbass, suppose everybody in the store, suppose everybody in the grocery store who you call unskilled labor decided, I'm going back to college, and just dropped their jobs and went off. You'd be hosed getting your groceries bagged, wouldn't you? He was and now he's trying to walk it back. He's the one that started the whole. Oh, these people are unskilled. We heard about the people going on strike demanding that their pay be raised. To the level of the 1960s. And he was like, oh, these people are just unskilled labor. And now he's trying to walk it back. Well, all labor is important labor. I'm not in a forgiving mood for anybody who works in television. No, I'm not in a forgiving mood. I'm tired of being tried. I'm tired of having people try to sell me on this guy. He's the Bear Grylls of blue collar workers. On camera, Bear Grylls. On camera, he pretends to be this survivalist working in incredibly dangerous environments. Drinking his own urine to survive the desert heat and all that other crazy crap. And meanwhile, off camera, they're sitting down having a 3-course meal. With the rest of the camera crew that's been doing everything he has backwards with a camera on their shoulder. Another fake hero. I think that was pissing me off is that I worked so many quote unquote unskilled jobs, and no matter how well I did, there's always, I'd try to be more meticulous and people, and there'd be somebody who'd bitch about how slow I was. I'd work faster, and somebody would bitch about how I wasn't doing the job right. I'm running around. I'm not even allowed to sit down. That's not for the peasants. And I'm busting my hump for minimum wage, and then I'm finding out I'm not even making as and now years later I'm finding out, hey, surprise, guess what? You weren't even making as much as a minimum wage worker back in the 1960s would. And I see this guy's face, mugging for the camera, talking about some people who clean mung out of giant vats in some factory, and America's dirtiest jobs, and he's cheesing it for the camera like Kool-Aid man, and And basically, all I've seen is him telling me that I didn't deserve any better. Because my work was unskilled. Where are all these skilled laborers now? At home, hiding from a germ. While the unskilled schmucks are out there keeping the wheels of the nation turning. And then I thought about, this guy manages to pull off, rustic and friendly, expression. I bet he's a complete a-hole in person. I don't know that. I don't know the guy in person. All I know is the face he puts on for TV. But I bet it's as fake as anything Bear Grylls ever did. And he probably as fake as Milli Vanilli. And I realize this guy is being paid. This guy is basically being paid more in an hour than I make in a month to pretend to be what I actually was. Yeah, constitutional amendment to require Congress zero balance the budget and require payments on the debt principal. Sounds like a good idea. Wish that the founding fathers had thought of it. But again, I'm not sure how effective that would be, or what the effect would be, because again, that's we talk about it as if our underlying financial system was stable. Here I go again. Fiat currency. We have been off any solid monetary system for 50 years. Richard Nixon put us on fiat currency. Basically damning us to an inevitable crash. Because there has never been a fiat currency that has lasted. They always devalue, they lose face value at frightening speed, and then they implode. Usually taking the nation along with them. Or leaving in dire straits that it takes decades or even centuries to dig its way back out of. Or you end up with something even more horrible. Look up the Weimar Republic and the collapse of the monetary system. Now, we are trying to, I don't know that there is any solution. For where we are, I can't imagine the Herculean effort it would take to turn this runaway rocketing freight train onto a new track, or to turn it around back the way it came. Getting this country back on a gold standard, no matter what we do, there is going to be a massive economic upheaval. And paying off our debts in monopoly money isn't going to help us either. But that's eventually what they're going to do. They're going to. This is what these easements are. It's basically we're printing more money to give. We're printing more fake money to give away. That's basically it. We're screwed. We've got more paper than we could ever back with gold, and we've got more zeros and digits in the system as imaginary numbers in computer files than we could even back with paper. That's how bad it's gotten. My personal advice is don't invest in money. Basically, don't save your money in a bank, for God's sake. Save it as an investment in something material. Buy land, buy tools, buy resources, buy supplies, buy an education while you can get it, if you can afford it, and make sure it's a good one. Don't waste your time at an Ivy League college. You're talking like a survivalist. Well, the survivalists are talking like sensible people now, aren't they? They're sounding a lot more rational now, aren't they? Don't go laughing at the survivalists. All it took was one person eating bat on a stick in China, and the next thing you know, you can't wipe your butt because there's no toilet paper. So don't talk to me about how irrational their theories about the collapse of civilization are, or how bad it could get, or what you'd have to do to survive it. Those people, by and large, are the only ones that have the remotest possible example of a clue. I'll take the guy that over prepares for a house fire over one that doesn't prepare for one at all. That's my best advice. If you have money, spend it on something that will last. Like I said, tools and the knowledge how to use them. Land and the training, and the books and the training on how to manage it. How to if it comes down to it, whether you're talking dealing with wildlife, or raising animals, or growing crops. And I'd also invest in something that can be bartered. Setting aside a little bit in gold and silver coin wouldn't be a bad idea either. But I'd say by and large, most people are going to be more willing to trade you for a can of coffee. Or a cup of sugar. Be ready for the ones that don't want to barter too. There's these things called bullets. Is this is this apocalyptic? No, this is what look around, turn on the news. This is what the vast majority of people in the world have to take into account on a daily basis. Imagine living in the Middle East. Imagine living in Africa. Imagine living in some of the worst countries in the belt of Asia. Imagine living in some of the Eastern Bloc countries where people have to prepare for famines on a regular basis. Come on. Our standard of living is not the natural state of man. And betting your future on a pile of paper, not too smart. Well, here's one to think about for you. They're making fun of the. They've got these preppers and survivalists. They've been out protesting the lockdown. They're protesting lockdown because they say it's excessive, especially for a disease that's turning out to have it's turning out to be surprisingly mild for a plague. It has a lower death rate than, again, for the 1,000th time. The COVID virus has a lower mortality rate than the annual flu season. and it's starting to bug people. And they had footage. I saw this one meme that was making fun of him. It shows top frame shows a guy standing in front of his bunker that a prepper standing in front, and the caption reads, "I could stay in here for 20, 30 months easy." And down at the bottom, it showed a bunch of these people at a protest protesting the government excesses in enforcing this quarantine. He says, "Oh, I want to go get my hair cut." Ass hat. Whoever made that was an ass hat. Okay? Yeah. The average survivalist works on making a hideaway bunker or a cabin or what have you, or just setting up so that they can, if they have to, they can stay at home for a year or maybe 2 years. The point is that the survivalists are the only ones who are going, there's no reason for us to be staying here yet. This is not this plague. It does not justify the level to which the government has shut down society and the level to which the law enforcement is harassing people simply for being outdoors. They had cops going out. A couple of guys sitting up on their own roof, drinking a couple of beers in the sun, and the cops came out and arrested them for breaking the quarantine. Nobody within 100 yards of their house, but they were breaking the quarantine. You're not even allowed out in your own backyard anymore. It's gotten that ridiculous. You think the COVID virus has a death toll? Wait until you see what poverty does. The funny thing is, Eli and T-Mug, the majority, 99.5% of the people who catch COVID are going to come out of it just fine. The remaining 0.5% are people who are already very old or very sick already. Flu has a higher death toll. But you don't see them shutting down the country every year when the flu season rolls in, do you? That doesn't make much difference to me, by and large. Of course, the effects, are as our economy gets worse and society, starts having more and more problems, it's going to affect me in my isolation anyway. I'm not that foolish, but I live a solitary, shut-in lifestyle 99.9% of the time. But this is foolishness. Now you take it, okay. They've basically come out. Sweden is about to, they say they're about to reach a state of herd immunity. They did what the more conservative of us said to do. They didn't shut down their entire country. The Swedish, they quarantined those who were at most risk, and largely let the rest of society go about its business. Result? The death, the mortality rate, surprise, it's about the same as if they had quarantined everybody. Maybe even a little lower. In short, what is happening in Sweden is evidence that what is happening in the United States and elsewhere is pointless. I will say this much. What is happening right now is basically a test ground. It's a test run. Uh, we can go through this, we can look at this, and we can say, can we learn from this? What do we do right? What do we do wrong? What worked? What did not? What do we do the next time when something more serious pops up? Which of these things do we do? Which of these things do we not do? And can we find ways to work around it? Or it can be a test run for, how can we shut down the government so bad that they beg us to take over? Which is what the Democrats want. Every move that the Republicans have made, to actually try and help people, they've been out there blocking it. I swear to God, they could throw a bucket of water on having to just watch them melt. No, I have not read My Life as a Bipedal Quadruped. Can't say I have, no. Sorry. Haven't got anything, I haven't got anything much except going online and complaining this week. This whole system sucks! That's my job. That's my job now. Nobody pays me for it. Boo-hoo! How do you get a job as a movie critic? I want to go. Yes, well, you're looking for a job. You're looking for a job? What do you want to do in our newspaper? I want to sit around, watch movies, and complain about them loudly. Well, doggone, son, you're a go-getter. Welcome aboard! Oh, in other news, Kim Jong-un is apparently in a vegetative state. I wonder how long before somebody crimps his air hose. I mean, can you imagine, working next to the world's most horrible tyrant, and you're like, I mean, even at the very top, this guy could turn around and say, I actually killed him, and you're dead, And he'd done it. I forget some of the horrible things, it doesn't matter how high you are in Kim Jong-un's little empire. He's killed he's had his advisors killed. He's, more than likely had his own father killed. So, no place is safe. You better believe he's in a vegetative state. They're having to watch to make sure nobody steps on his air hose and forgets to take their foot off again. I'm getting all sorts of these people. I got people asking, how can I prevent somebody from throwing a curse on my dog? These are the kind of questions I'm getting in the quorum these days. I'm like, what? And I mean, these people are dead serious. These people who believe that their neighbors are witches and throwing curses on them. Okay, make sure all the look first. Check on your cabinets. Make sure all the caps on the cleaning fluids are closed. They let out fumes. Open the windows, get some fresh air, put down whatever you're smoking, and reach out and get a grip. But I'm getting is, could Loki from the movies, from the MCU, Could Loki trick the Hogwarts sorting hat into sorting someone into the wrong house? I am seriously worried that some of these people think that that Hogwarts and Loki are real. You know. You know, all those people putting those door alarm, more and more people are putting cameras up over their door. It's turning out they're pretty much freaking useless. Uh, you remember me telling you about the guy who built the booby-trapped package for porch pirates? The whole thing got started because he caught, somebody stole a package off his front porch. He caught them on camera. But they had their hoodie up, and the camera didn't see their face. And so the police said, well, we can't do nothing. They just stood there and, shrugged and, and left him to his devices. So, he went out and made that booby trap just to deal with it. There's another guy that set up a booby trap. Basically, it was a lawn sprinkler on his porch. Anytime, he sit there, anytime a porch pirate approached, ugh. You have to excuse me. It's getting late. I'm getting cranky. I'm always cranky, but I'm getting exceptionally cranky. Double cranky. Getting a lecture post, 99, getting a post on one of my, basically is one of the 1%, everything is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Well, I'm all sweated out. Eating onions on top of God's thumb? I have no idea what that means. What the eating? Oh yeah. Oh, I'm not surprised that people have been taking cheap jabs at me through TV tropes for a long time now. It doesn't surprise me that some new little Niedermeyers found them. My life. I'll give my life as a bipedal quadruped a look. You do realize you're giving me something else to distract me with. Snakeskin duct tape. Interesting character name. Like I said, this guy's saying, 1% perspiration, inspiration, 99% perspiration. You know who said that? Thomas Edison, who is a fraud. He was the Steve Jobs of his era. What he'd do, he would gather all these other people who were way smarter than him, put them all in a room. He'd come up with an idea and walk up, do it, and then he'd walk off and leave them to do it. Then he'd come in and take the credit. Like I said, Steve Jobs. Every year while Steve Jobs was alive, he was at these expos holding up the latest phone as if he had built it himself. Every year, everybody waiting for him to, I can't imagine, and people that worked with him, he was nuts, said he was nuts. I hate to say it, but people, both sides of the argument, they all have a point, but they don't realize that their point doesn't go away all the way across the table. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense to you? These people who say that, you just have to put your nose to the grindstone and make it happen. And then there are the people on the other side who say, you can't do it if you're not inspired. If you try and work uninspired, you end up with grindstone crap or worse, nothing. I think that the people on the other side, the people in the grindstone, these are the people who come up with, they're the ones that come up with the inspiration and expect somebody else to do all the perspirating. That's what they expect. I've got all these great ideas for your story. Why don't you write? They've never been in a situation where they've sat there. They've never sat there and stared at a canvas that's just staring back at them. They've never sat at a keyboard and the words just won't come. Or they haven't had to type the same paragraph over and over and over and over and over again, and it just won't go forward. Or they've never been in a situation where they get up, I'm gonna make a working day out of this. I'm gonna make a great day. They get up and they go and they do the shit, shower and shave, and they come in here and they sit down in front of the computer, and suddenly it's 4 p.m. you don't need inspiration. I can make a bunch of people write inspiration. You know, I'm a teacher. I managed to make 12 unruly children sit down and write something. Yeah, and you remember how much those essays sucked. I hope. You want to make you want to sit when you're a writer, when you're an artist, when you're a cartoon, you want to make something good. And after you've used up all your ideas, and the well's not filling back up again. On the flip side, no, I know that the secret to breaking a writer's block is to write. Sitting there erasing the same line I've just drawn half a dozen times. You know, the task before you starts seeming a little bit insurmountable. And you finish and you go, it's crap. And you post it. And they receive it just the same as everything else you've done. That's a real demoralizer. How long does it take you to read a comic strip? A minute? A second? It probably took me 4 hours to draw it. There are people out there who are absolute machines who can pound out comic strip after comic strip. Of course, most of those people who are machines pound out the same jokes, the same half dozen jokes over and over and over again. How many times has Dagwood tripped over his mailman? How many times has Garfield scarfed down a lasagna? How many times did Snoopy chase the Red Baron? Got to a point where most of them were barely distinguishable from each other. The fact, and by and large, he was relying on that fact because he was relying on the fact that his audience was, new people coming in, use the same jokes over and over again. It's great if you're a stage comedian and nobody watches your show more than once. I'm making excuses. I'm making excuses for my own unproductivity. But they're true excuses. Hey, it looks like you're using ad block. We know. Adverts are incredibly annoying, but they really help us support the site. Let me see if I can. I wonder if I can still log in on FimFiction. I don't think they ever delete anybody. You know what my new favorite excuse is for my lack of productivity? I'm sick and old. There, now how are you going to answer that one? I still am in the film fiction system. Login. Oh, my aching butt. Bookmarking film fiction. Bookmarking my life as a bipedal quadruped. Tracking. Read it later. Okay, there we go. I'll read the story. Okay. I do believe my throat is drying out just a little bit. The spaceship, what you did, the one about the spaceship, I didn't write it. I haven't read anything about a spaceship. I have no idea where that story, It's a book I picked up in a library like 40 years ago. Yeah, I know. It's just, thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that sometimes you need a break to refresh. It's just, it seems like the breaks come faster and faster and last longer and longer. What I need a 21-year-old me to come in here and whip my 49-year-old me into shape. And to carry my garbage out and do my dishes. House cleaning. I haven't mopped my. I can't let myself think about it. If I start thinking about it, I go off. I spiral off into a bad place. I can't let myself think about where I've let myself get, because if I do, it overwhelms me, and I get in a real bad mental space. As in the gee, that shotgun looks, the mouth of that shotgun looks kind of tasty, kind of bad mental space. Not that I would do that. I'm allergic to eating lead, but again, something that this is one thing I like to mention. Whenever that subject comes up, I like to point out there's a meme I saw online. I really wish I had another name for it other than meme. It just makes it sound hip and trendy when it isn't. Here's a saying: when you think you want to die, people who have suicidal ideation, it's not that you want to die. It's that you want the life that you're stuck in to stop. And that perspective, that insight, it changes a lot. It makes coping easier in a way, and it helps you to it is important about understanding yourself in that way. It's something I think they should tell everybody, especially people who are genuinely suicidally depressed. It's not that you want to die, it's that you want the life you're stuck in to stop. And I can safely say, yeah, I want that. And it's just so few of us know how to unstick ourselves. And some of us, I've reached a point in my life where I realize I wonder if somebody else helping me out of the muck again is really going to make any difference. Some people just probably aren't really meant to take care of themselves. Some people just can't get, sad to say. Whether you think that makes them a failure or not, that's your own lookout. But like I always said, my father, it's like God looked at my dad and decided, let's flip all his genes upside down and give them to his son. So my father is one of these can do anything kind of people. He and my mom are in their 70s now. And this is a man who, not 5 years ago, went out back, built a work shed, but pretty much by himself, using his own tools and lumber. Not even a preset kit. I mean, just raw lumber. Just boom. I went out there one day, and all I could do was stand there and hold the tools for him. I couldn't even get up on the ladder. I was too fat. Dad, this thing is only rated for 300 pounds, so you just stay down here then. That whole thing with Eiderdown in Darth Vulcan, with Eiderdown and her friends being screwed over by the City Hall, that was from another story. I pretty much lifted the whole thing. It was supposed to be an alternate timeline where each of the each of the main six ended up as a different element of harmony. Discord had made some sort of bar bet, gone back in time and gone into another timeline and mucked things up. And it wasn't Eiderdown in the original story, it was Fluttershy. She was in a remedial flying class, and they got abandoned at a weather station. Tornado came in and they saved the day, and then they got shafted. And I was so pissed because by the time the story ended, they still hadn't, even though, Celestia, Celestia, you think you could maybe, issue a pardon, and an apology because she got shafted? No. And I remember that it was a very exasperating story. You see that sort of injustice in real life all the time, though. Robber breaks into a store. He's got a gun. Cashier pops up over the counter, takes him out, saves the lives of everybody in there, gets fired by the company. Because the corporate, I can't even use the word I want to use, because the corporation, has rules against, that sort of thing, because they might be liable if anything happened. And people just getting shafted. One guy getting, one pizza guy who got fired because he started carrying a firearm because he was being sent into neighborhoods with a crime and murder rate through the roof. At one point, he had to hide behind his own car and return fire at a bunch of people who were trying to kill him because they were going to steal. They were going to steal his double pepperoni and all the money he had, and his car, and probably his kidney. It was The bit with the farmer, though, that's more an amalgamation of just the general injustice I've seen against people who own land. You would not believe some of the absolute insanity that people have suffered at the hands of the government. People who just want to own a little piece of property and live in peace, unbothered, and the government sets on persecuting the immortal soul right out of them. There's one family. They bought one case. The couple, they bought a patch of land, and then it was about a triangular plot of land, and they were going to put a house on it. And they had dug up the basement, and then rain swept through, and there was standing water in the basement. After it had been dug out. And the EPA came along and declared it a wetland. I'm not making that up. They declared it a wetland, even though there was a train track down one side of the triangle and a 6-lane highway down the other. They've had people that have lost their land because there was one guy who lost control of his land because they declared it as a nature preserve for, among other creatures, Bigfoot. It's just it's a scam. You see when most people, the procedure goes, it's a money scam. It's a land scam. What they do, it's a land grab. What the EPA does, the EPA comes and finds a juicy bit of land. Somebody starts building on it, and they trump up a charge. This is the nature. This is the natural habitat of the spotted boring fart beetle. and the landowners are informed they either have to make the land habitable to the the flaming spotted fart beetle, or they lose everything. And the fines and the fees, and they start racking up all these uh, penalties, and the people have no choice. They have to sell the land, and because the EPA is looking at the land, the price of the land falls through the floor. And you know who comes along and sweeps the land up? uh, Environmentalists. In almost every case, an environmental interest group, or one environmental interest group or another. The environmental interest group turns around, resells the land. They manage to whitewash the reputation of the property, resell it at a huge marked up price to the government, and give the money to the EPA. I'm not making this up. It's standard operational procedure. It's just some absolutely profoundly evil people in the world, and not all of them runs around, and not all of the most evil people in the world are the ones who runs around stabbing or shooting or poisoning other people. They're the ones that sit in little offices, rubbing their mandibles together, plotting about how they can destroy other human beings with a few dots of ink. All these people would say we should put controls on deadly weapons, and I'm like, great, let's start with typewriters. I submit to you that Karl Marx, all he did was write a book, and he's resulted in the death of trillions. Well, tens of billions anyway. Yeah. Oh, that's so much better. So a farmer getting screwed out of his land over and over again, you know, getting taxed and retaxed and refined and rezoned, and having it whittled away until he ends up putting his wife in an early grave after the stress kills her. Oh, what did the pony farmer do? He's the one. He got fed up with it. Basically they took his land from him. He tried to go and plead his case with Celestia, but he kept getting put at the back of the line behind all the royalty and nobility. And every time he got to the gate, it had already been closed. So when they finally took his land from him, he went home. He was a unicorn. He scooped up the whole chunk of land in one big ball, floated it all the way back down, all the way back to Canterlot, and then dropped it all on Celestia's head. So you want my land? Here you go. Boom. Left her buried in a few thousand tons of mud in her own courtyard. I wish that yeah. When I get angry, I get creative, and that's And that breaks my heart a little bit. I wish I could get creative for better reasons. Sometimes, just there's some things about me that make me wonder so much about the state of my soul. I claim to be a born-again Christian, but I have just a heart so tarry black it looks like I'm a chain smoker from the inside out. What did the writer do? Which writer? Oh, we're losing track again here of what we're talking about. The writer of the original story, he basically, they just went on with the story, and even though nobody went, 10 years ago, Fluttershy here and all her friends got shafted by City Hall. Could you do something about it, Your Highness? And no, they didn't do that. They just went on, And I'm like, some party was like, this injustice will not stand. And so I had to write one where the guy who instigated all this got theirs, You remember the arc around the Hilltop Cirrus, and this is the thing about Darth Vulcan. He's a teenager. He's easily provoked to wrath. For one thing, he's got that teenage self-righteousness going for him, and like anybody, like any other teenager, he has like any other dysfunctional teenager, he's got serious problems with authority figures, and hearing their story just hit all the right buttons with him. It did with me too. That's it says there's way too much of me in Darth Vulcan. I think that's what disturbs me the most about writing him. All the wrong things. I really hope this new bed helps me sleep better. At the very least, sleeping on a mattress that isn't 10 years old will be a change. Oh, yeah. That's sort of, they never apologized to Twilight Sparkle after the wedding either. Yeah, they're always going to be things like that where they mess up on their own message. Excuse me. I'm trying to remember if I did anything with it. In the audience, Arcturus read him the riot act, I think. He tweaked their noses about. He tweaked their noses about the great and powerful Trixie. They pointed out that when she visited their town, she did nothing wrong. She was there entertaining them, putting on a free show. And the main six heckled her and then tried to upstage her on her own stage and got rightfully humiliated for it. And then what happens? A couple of the village idiots managed to drag a giant bear back into town that stomps her home and business flat. And never once did they think about it. Did they think, gee, we did her wrong? No, they screwed her over. And she rightfully ran for her life. If you were a back in the day, when you were a traveling entertainer, small towns, a crowd could turn into an ugly riot really quick. Taking to your heels was a survival trait. The Mayor Duell episode was a real kick in the teeth too. Rainbow Dash was getting too arrogant and egotistical because everybody was hero worshipping her. So they decided to show her up by dressing up in a garage costume and being an arrogant, egotistical spotlight stealer themselves. Lesson not learned. Boy. Okay, it is midnight, ladies and gents. It is 6 minutes after midnight. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. We've been at this 3 hours. I think I'm going to call it a night. I don't know if I'm going to go to sleep or whether I'm just going to slip into a coma here. I don't know. Okay, you all take care of yourselves.